Hi, I'm Jeremy from Delonix, and this is a quick video introduction on how HID xenon lighting systems work and in comparison to halogen. Now, this is a halogen bulb. This particular one is a H1 halogen bulb, and as you would know, the way halogen produces light is it passes current through the filament inside. The filament gets hot, produces light and heat, and this is the way our standard headlights work in the car. Now, by comparison, a HID bulb like this one does not have a filament inside. It operates, if you can see in the camera, that there's a chamber on the inside of the tube, and either side of the chamber is an electrode. Now, the way it produces light is high voltage passes through to each electrode. There is a discharge between the two, and that, in combination with the xenon gas on the inside of the chamber, produces a much brighter and usually whiter light than our halogen. It also does all this using a lot less current. Now, how they connect is actually very easy. This device here is your ballast. Your HID ballast takes the 12 volts that was going from the car to the halogen bulb, and you take that 12 volts off the halogen and it plugs into the ballast. The ballast then steps it up to 23,000 volts initially to fire the bulb, and once the bulb is going, it then drops it down to about 80 volts and sits around 80 volts steady. So to connect up a HID system is very easy. You have the input that was, as I said, going to your halogen, now plugs into your HID loom. This feeds the ballast, so this is your ballast input, that's your 12 volts in. Ballast steps it up to 23,000 volts. You have the high voltage cables coming out here. They plug into the globe like so. They're waterproof connectors too. And that is how your HID system is wired. 12 volts into the system, feeds the ballast. Ballast steps it up to 23,000 initially, and then 80 volts once it's going. High voltage coming out and to the HID bulb. Now, a high-low system is essentially the same, but in a halogen bulb you have two filaments inside. You see there's, if the camera can get that angle, you'll see underneath there is a shield that sits underneath one of the filaments, and then the second filament, which is closer to the base, it has no shields around it. So when you're driving with just a low beam on, the first filament with the shield on your right is engaged, and the shield is blocking any of the light from coming down to the lower half of the reflector. When you engage high beam, the second filament comes on and there's no shield, so it is lighting up the entire reflector behind the bulb, which throws the light further down the road for high beam. Now, with a HID high-low system, this is a H4 bulb, you can see it has the same socket as the halogen, but there are not two filaments or two chambers with a HID. There is still just the one chamber, but the way it works is there is a solenoid in the base, and when you engage high beam, the current pulls, there's a magnet in there, and it pulls the globe closer to the base. What that is doing is changing the focal point. So you'll see you've also got this little black shield. When it's installed in the car, it's installed this way with a shroud underneath, and when low beam is engaged, this little cutout here is blocked by that black shield, so there's no light passing underneath, it's just passing to the top, in the top half of the reflector, which is shining the light down in front of you. When you engage high beam, the magnet pulls the globe closer to the base. That moves this shield out the way, and the light can now come out the bottom into the lower half of the reflector, and that then throws the light further up the road. So instead of being down in front of you, the light is now angled up and further down the road. That straight line you'll see cut out in the shroud is what gives you the cut-off beam as well. So that's how a HID high-low works. The only difference with installing a high-low system over a single beam system is that the high-low needs your controller and relay. So the way it works is you take your 3-pin socket off the back of one of the halogen bulbs. It doesn't matter which side, you can pick up the signal either side, and it plugs into your 3-pin plug on your relay. The relay then has two outputs for the ballasts, as well as a direct positive and negative connection to your battery. So you have positive to the battery, you have your two earths, and you have your two ballasts. So this takes the 12 volts from your battery, it feeds the ballast then connects to the globe with the high voltage cabling, like so. And then the last cable is your high-low controller, and you'll see each side has this little plug, and this plugs in there, and that's the way your high-low system works. So you've got left and right for each side. The relay feeds power to the ballast feeds high voltage power to the globe. When you engage high beam, you've got 12 volts passing through this extra little cable here, which activates a solenoid, pulls it in closer to the base, and it throws the light further up the road for high beam. So that's essentially how HID systems work. The advantages to HID over halogen, there's three main advantages. The first one is obvious, there's a lot more light produced from a HID system. Now, a 35 watt HID will produce around 3 times as much light as a 55 or 60 watt halogen bulb. A 55 watt HID will produce around 4.5, sometimes even 5 times as much light as a halogen bulb. Second advantage to a HID system is that a HID bulb running 35 watts will last about 3,000 hours. That's about 10 times as long as a halogen bulb. Now, if you push your globe harder and you run it with a 55 watt ballast, you'll get about 2,000 hours, but it's still a lot more than your 300 hours you're getting from a halogen. Third advantage to a HID system is it's pulling a lot less current. Now, if you've got 4 spotties and they're all with 130 watt bulbs, then you've got a lot of current draw on the system, and you possibly need to upgrade your alternator to handle the power. By comparison, you could be running 4 HID systems, all running off 35 watt ballasts, and your total power will only be 140 watts. It'll be a lot less than your halogen system. So, brighter, lasts 10 times as long, it's a much whiter light compared to your halogens. Even your 130 watts halogens look dull and yellow when you compare it to a HID. Lasts longer, less current, and much brighter light.